So first, we will start with the definition of Phillips curve. Phillips curve, one thing that you have to understand at the very beginning is that Phillips curve, its functional structure, what it is actually relating, that has changed a lot of times over the course of the history of economics. And also one Nobel Award also has been given on the work of Phillips curve. Okay, so let's look at the definition. So the definition is the negative relationship between inflation and unemployment is called the Phillips curve. That's what generally we understand by the Phillips curve. But to say Phillips curve contains also a lot of other things. So with a semicolon, we'll write this in its modern form, but because that's what Phillips curve is today. So in its modern form, comma, a relationship among three things actually. So first is among inflation. So that is there. Then we have a stricter idea of unemployment, which is cyclical movement. Cyclical unemployment. Then expected inflation. So you can guess where it is coming from. And there is a third one, which behaves more like the error that we have in any statistical model. So that is supply shock. So this supply shocks is basically its treatment is same as the error UI that we take in statistical modeling. Okay, but before going into the shape of Phillips curve and so on and so forth, let us connect it to something that we have done earlier. So we are going to connect it with our ADAS model. Apart from that, the basic question is why at all we are studying this, because as you will see later that Phillips curve shows the flip side of ADAS model. So the question generally appears in our mind is, when we have ADAS model and we have a good understanding of how the model works, how policy affects it, why Phillips curve? This is because the variables that we want to target through ADAS, they are not targeting that in political situations more often than not, is not so observable. But the observable, and competing goals, the observable and competing goals of an economy are two. Number one is low inflation, and number two is low unemployment. So you would be happy if both of them are low. Also, there is an idea of the fact that inflation and unemployment are those two variables which directly kind of concerns everybody. So it has a certain degree of political layer in these two variables also. And if you look at the economy, if you look at the propagandas, political propagandas or manifestos, you'll see that they talk about inflation and unemployment every time, right? But what is the problem? The problem is that these two goals are competing. That is the problem. If they were not, then we wouldn't be studying Phillips curve at all, because then we have a good situation. We can make a good economy with policies because we can achieve two of them together, but that's impossible. Historically, what we have seen is far more dangerous than that actually. where we are saying here that there is these two goals of low inflation and low unemployment are competing. Historically, you have seen that the scenario where we have high inflation and high unemployment, that has been observed, something which we called stagflation. So historically we have observed that. So we can have a period with high inflation and high unemployment. Okay, but having both of this is impossible. So if you look at the economy, if you look at the policies taken by the government, even in this country, you will see that at times there were governments who favored low inflation, and at times there were governments who favored low unemployment. What we are studying here is that, first of all, that in the short run, this is achieving these two together, whether it is possible or not. And to that extent, Phillips curve shows that it is not. In the long run, we have a certain debate whether in the long run this relation actually holds or not. Okay, because that is true not only in a mathematical sense whether they are related or not, but in also in a more deeper sense. And the deeper sense is that if they are not related, then in the long run we must have to think of some other avenues to attack inflation or unemployment. Okay, all right, so we'll talk about the Indian experience later. Anyway, so just to start, consider an expansionary policy. I'm not writing whether it is monetary or fiscal because that's not the interest at this point of time. So consider an expansionary policy. Okay, and what will be the objective? Which tries to increase aggregate demand. Okay, now we are going to draw an ADAS diagram, and we'll see why it is natural, kind of natural, to have this negative relationship at work. Okay, so let us draw a ADAS diagram. So there is Y, and then here is P, then there is long run aggregate supply, right, which relates to Y bar, the classical's output. Then let's consider an AD naught, and an SRAS naught. Okay. All right, so we have considered an expansionary monetary policy which is trying to increase AD. So from AD naught to AD1. So this is our AD naught, there will be a shift and we reach AD1. Okay, so from E naught, where corresponding to Y bar, the price was P naught, we move to a point like E1 in the short run. All of this we know, right? Y1 and P1. Now, what happens at E1? Y1 is greater than Y bar and P1 is greater than P naught. So what do we have here? Since Y1 is greater than Y bar, it implies how higher output, which implies lower unemployment. Lower unemployment. Whereas here, P1 is greater than P bar, P naught, sorry, P1 is greater than P naught, so that means inflation. So we have a higher average price level. What does it tell you? It tells you that we have basically two choices. If we take an expansionary policy, then the economy will move upward along the SRAS curve and we will have lower unemployment but higher inflation. And if we take, instead of that, a contractionary policy, which is not popular, contractionary policy, then what will happen? We'll move in this direction. So expansionary policy takes us to this, up above the SRAs and up along the SRAs. and contractionary policy takes us down, right? Now, even if we're considering a point here, then also we have, okay, so let me just draw this one. So if I draw an AD2 like this, then we have the opposite problem. Moving in this direction means higher unemployment, and in this direction it means lower price level. Lower price level. So what we have here now, we have a situation where independent of what policy I am taking, the negative relationship between inflation and unemployment, that remains true. So that means when I'm taking a policy, it's more like a choice between these two rather than lowering both of them together. Okay. All right. So we have two results here, right? So expansionary policy gives us this result, that unemployment reduces but inflation rises. Contractionary policy gives us this result, that unemployment increases but inflation reduces. So we have a trade-off. This is the trade-off that Phillips curve shows us. Okay. So when we are studying Phillips curve, this is the trade-off that we are looking at. All right. So now we are going to go back to a little bit of the first generation of Phillips curve and so on and so forth. All right. So obviously, as I said, that Phillips curve was named after the person who did it, and he was A.W. Phillips. A.W. Phillips. The paper or the work was published in 1958. Okay. So what is the work? It was, first of all, you must know that this is an empirical work that we are talking about. Okay. It's not theoretical work that we are talking about. It's an empirical work. Not only that, given it was 1958, it was essentially a curve fitting exercise. Curve fitting exercise. Okay. Very close to what you have learned in statistics. So it's a curve, it was a curve fitting exercise on what? So there was data, there was British data on unemployment rate and nominal wage growth. This is very important, nominal wage growth. Okay. Nominal wage growth, and the data of from 1861 to 1957. Now you know the detailed problem involved in this, right? Whether it had a period where the relationship changed or not and all that. But in those times they were not there. So it was a simple curve fitting exercise. The period was 1860 to 1957. 1861 to 1957. Okay. So what was the result that was obtained? So what is the result? The result is historically unemployment rate tended to be low in years when nominal wage grew rapidly and high in years when nominal wage grew slowly. Now, that means that this is a result dependent on the change of rates, okay? Not the rates themselves, but change of rates. So now, obviously, then we'll write the equation following our growth theory dot culture. So the Phillips curve by A.W. Phillips was this. W dot, remember this is nominal wage, not real wage, okay, which is 1 by W dW dt equal to f of u, which is the unemployment rate, where f dash u was negative. And it doesn't end here. And W dot equal to 0 at u equal to un. So u equal to un is, statistically speaking, it is more like an intercept, right? What we call the natural rate of unemployment, so on and so forth. It is basically kind of an intercept. So we'll look into that in the diagram. So this was the Phillips curve as proposed by A.W. Phillips himself. Okay, this is important because our study will go like this. This will be the first one, then some problems will evolve, and then we'll change it, and we'll proceed, and we'll look into 4 such changes. Okay. All right. So obviously the sentence that we have written, it's coming from the olden days. So in our terms, what we'll write is a very simple thing. We'll write that, what does the equation show? Wage inflation is negatively related. Wage inflation is negatively related with unemployment rate. With unemployment rate. So that is the first part. And it falls to 0 at natural rate of unemployment. Remember one thing, that we are using this term natural rate of unemployment here, but the term itself, it came after the construction or the empirical work of Phillips curve. So now we know that it is called natural rate of unemployment. So we are using the term, but the idea was that there was an intercept. Okay. And since we have this result, there is a certain degree of responsibility to the explanation why we are looking at this kind of a function. So what is the possible explanation? The explanation was given in line of Keynesian theory. Okay. Because it was the Keynesian theory came in, the general theory came in 1936 and 1958. So anyway, so the explanation, or as we can say, because it is statistical work, possible explanation. So the explanation was, to certain degree, it was of Keynesian nature. That means what? That means in terms of market imperfection. So we are not talking about demand and supply here. We are talking about something else in line of sticky wage model. That is, we are talking about a little bit of bargaining power, labor union, and bargaining, the strength of labor union, so on and so forth. Okay. So the first line that we must write is nominal wage is determined. Nominal wage is determined by collective bargaining. Collective bargaining. This is a line directly from sticky wage model. We know this line. So who are the parties between, so this is, this wrote like to save space. So between employers and labor union. So nowadays the economy has partly changed and partly, I'll say, segregated, in the sense that even if these kind of scenarios occur today, they occur, all right, we don't really read about them. Okay. I don't know why, but it's just that probably we have read too much in the last 30-40 years. Anyways, so between employers and labor union, hence market forces are absent. So they're not here. All right. Now, consider a recessionary period. Consider a recessionary period. What happens during a recession? Output is low, which means unemployment is high, which means strength of trade union is small, which again means lower bargaining power on union's side. So if trade union has lower bargaining power, what will happen? Even if recession is going on, no one is interested actually people to employ, let alone give them money. Much like what we have here now, today. Okay, so what is the result? The result is lower wage inflation. So in terms of bargaining, if I say the idea is very simple, you have two parties. One of them is small in strength because of recession, and that's the labor union. And since labor union has lower strength, the result of the bargaining will be biased towards employers, resulting in a lower wage inflation. That means we have connected higher unemployment and lower wage inflation. Okay. And the opposite picture occurs in boom, because in boom output is high, which implies that unemployment is low. That means larger union and higher bargaining power. Which then implies high wage inflation. High wage inflation. So that means we have explained that there is a negative relationship. But it depends on not market forces. Okay, not but, let's say, and it depends not on market forces, that's better. Not on market forces, but on bargaining power. So now you can understand the labor movement that was observed, for a long time. Okay.